Hey, thanks so much for finding the video. Do us a favor. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. And be sure to leave your comment. We love to interact. Enjoy the video. So apparently, the New Orleans Saints were one spot away from drafting an LSU player. Shocking, right? That is an oft-discussed topic here about whether or not the Saints shun LSU guys. My feeling on it is you don't shun an entire program, especially one that's produced as much talent as LSU has. It's just rare that there's a player on the board at a position of need when you select. And I know everyone brings up Patrick Queen from last year. The Saints also needed an offensive lineman. They took Cesar Ruiz because they were cutting Larry Warford as a cap-saving move, and they needed a starter on the interior. So say whatever you want. I mean, the numbers bear this out. The Falcons don't draft Georgia guys at great numbers. The Dolphins don't draft Miami Hurricane guys at great numbers. The Packers don't draft Wisconsin guys. I mean, it's across the NFL. Nonetheless, the Saints apparently were going to draft Terrace Marshall. Darren Gant is a writer at Panthers.com, covers the team for the team's website. And in a recent write-up, post-draft, he wrote, BYU left tackle Brady Christensen was probably going to be the guy at 59. And there was a deal cooking that could have moved them back on the clock within a few spots to take LSU wide receiver Terrace Marshall Jr. Marshall was quickly becoming one of those guys whose name was beginning to stick out on the board with not much space above him, but a lot of space below at his position. He was becoming a value guy. Then someone got a call that the Saints were about to take Marshall 60th overall. The Panthers shifted gears, taking Marshall in the 59th spot instead. Saints stood pat at number 60, took the best player on their board, which, of course, was Pete Werner, the linebacker out of Ohio State. And we've seen this in recent years, where teams have traded up ahead of New Orleans to take players that the Saints coveted. It happened in 2017 with Patrick Mahomes. Of course, the Saints were going to take Mahomes. Kansas City traded up to 10, one spot ahead of New Orleans, and selected the quarterback. The Saints were prepared to take Kenneth Murray a few years ago, the linebacker out of Oklahoma, before he was snatched up one pick prior. I'll remind you also in 2017, the Saints were going to select Reuben Foster. Remember that? The Saints were going to take Reuben Foster with the last pick of round one. Foster, as the story goes, was on the phone with the Saints. And then John Lynch of the 49ers calls him and says, hey, we're going to pick you. He says, no, I'm on the phone. You don't pick till 34. I'm on the phone right now with the Saints. Lo and behold, the Niners traded up to 31 and took Reuben Foster. So I guess there's a couple of ways you can look at this. There's this recurring situation, then there's what happened with the player, specifically with Terrace Marshall. I would have loved to have seen Terrace Marshall in New Orleans. But I also think, as we've talked about so much with respect to the Saints, I have seen Sean Payton over the years do remarkable work without a top-tier guy at receiver based on the assets you gave up to get him. Michael Thomas was a second-round pick, yo. The first-round picks you used on receivers were Robert Meacham and Brandon Cooks. You've done better with guys like Marcus Colston and Lance Moore and certainly Michael Thomas in round 2, even Kenny Stills, who was a fifth-round guy. I mean, the Saints have found great value at receiver and in pass catchers as a whole. When you've got $100 million invested in Michael Thomas, when you've got the money you do invested in Alvin Kamara as a pass catcher, you have options there. So I would have loved to have seen Terrace Marshall in New Orleans, but I think the offense is going to work just fine. I hate the fact that Marshall is reunited with Joe Brady, and now when you look at that Kansas City offense and the receivers in it, when you're talking about DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and now Terrace Marshall as a 3, and you've got Christian McCaffrey in that offense with Sam Darnold and Joe Brady calling plays, now all of a sudden it feels like Carolina is a team very much on the come. It's also worth noting that the BYU left tackle Brady Christensen, the Panthers traded back in and took him at 70, 10 picks later. So they got both guys. But specifically with being aggressive, I'll say it this way. I mentioned Reuben Foster. The Niners traded ahead of the Saints to take Reuben Foster at 31. Foster played 2 seasons. He had a drug arrest, he had domestic violence allegations, and he had a series of injuries. He's out of the league. Do you remember who the Saints took with the 32nd pick? It was Ryan Ramczyk. That one's worked out okay for New Orleans. And maybe Pete Werner's going to work out okay for New Orleans. Just like when Kansas City took Patrick Mahomes and the Saints took Marshawn Lattimore, that one worked out for New Orleans. A lot of times we focus on who you didn't get. It's pretty natural. But if you hit on the pick, you forget about who you didn't draft. The reason people bring up Alex Molden so much is because they passed on Eddie George to take Alex Molden, who had a long NFL career. Wasn't great with the Saints, but he was a high first-round draft pick, and they passed on a guy who became a Hall of Famer. So it's going to stand out more. There is a benefit to being aggressive in the draft, no doubt. But there's also times where if you just hit on the prospects you take, we forget about all the ancillary stuff. Now, specifically with regards to Terrace Marshall, there's a piece up at ESPN.com right now that Matt Bowen did. Matt Bowen played 7 years of NFL football. He now is a writer for ESPN+. He went and analyzed the 10 rookies who he said landed with the perfect team in this year's NFL draft. And 2 of the 10 are the 2 LSU receivers who went in the first 2 rounds. He's got both Jamar Chase with the Bengals and, of course, Terrace Marshall with the Panthers being among 10 rookies who landed with the perfect team. That's not just first-round picks. That's literally of all draft picks. When he rates the 10 who landed with the best teams, I mean, he's got Trey Lance in San Francisco on that list. And he's got, as we mentioned, Jamar Chase with the Cincinnati Bengals, 5th overall. And it makes a lot of sense. A.J. Green, no longer in Cincy. Jamar Chase could be the most targeted pass catcher as a rookie. It would not surprise me at all. I mean, obviously, with this many rookie quarterbacks, and quarterbacks tend to get more credit for Rookie of the Year, more look for Rookie of the Year, that's likely going to be one of those guys. But if it's not, the one who it could be, same way that Justin Jefferson just had a massive season in Minnesota, I could see the very same thing for Jamar Chase in Cincinnati because of the targets. And then Terrace Marshall, of course, 59 overall. When you talk about a guy who could be the number 3 in that system with DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson and Christian McCaffrey, if he's the 4th option that defenses are keying on, in the slot or over the top. I mean, you think about the way that Joe Brady, when he was in New Orleans, watched Sean Payton use Michael Thomas, a bigger receiver who can play in the slot, but Marshall with game-breaking speed to beat you over the top. He'll jab you over the middle, and then here comes the haymaker when you least expect it. Makes a lot of sense. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.